Lovely.
Hello, welcome to a lockdown special of the Yellow Show at Warrington Town FC with me, James Gordon. I'm joined virtually by Matt Turner. Matt, how are you?
All good, mate. I'm trying to stay busy without any work to do and without football. So it's tough, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
You've been pub quizzing, haven't you? I've seen. We'll talk about what everyone's been up to, but we'll also talk about the end of the season, the null and void situation. We'll have a bit of a natter about where it leaves the club and the players. We might have a reflection on some of the highs and lows of the season just gone, and then we'll have a bit of a chat about the chairman's Q&A, which has gone on the website recently about the status of the club. We are unofficially sponsored by Cantilever Chippy, which of course we can't have at this moment in time. We're like a month. We're a month. What's the word? We're a month withdrawal.
Deprived. We're a month deprived.
Deprived is a very good word. Yeah. Deprived is a very good word.
I think both of our health is being vastly improved though by not having Cantilever Chippy in our lives.
They might be able to increase capacity on the media gantry because we don't take up as much weight, perhaps.
Yeah.
So obviously, I think the last episode we did was when Ben Garrity signed for Blackpool, and I suppose it was a bit of a, well, I wouldn't say an up and a down season, but certainly there was points during sort of that period since then where you were wondering. You were feeling a little, I don't know. I don't want to sound negative because it's not a negative situation at all. To be in and around the playoffs is a great achievement and all that. But it was only really, it's probably typical that the season had only just started looking like coming together when the season finished.
Yeah, I mean, in a way it was kind of frustrating because, they it's widely acknowledged, by people in and out of the dressing room that they hadn't. The lads hadn't hit the kind of standards that they had the season before. But when the season ended, they were third. And if they'd have played that last game against Buxton, as it turned out, they would have finished it second. Mm. And it kind of makes it frustrating in a way because, what if they'd have got their act together a little bit sooner? They may have been a little bit close to South Shields and there would have been another title challenge in the offing. But I guess we'll never know now.
Yeah, in some ways, I suppose it go either way because I suppose if you were in South Shields' position, you'd be even more gutted. I think a lot's being made of that situation where the 12 points clear or whatever. Morp had enough games in hand to get within 3 points, but I suppose in some ways, I don't know. I guess ultimately you've still had that promotion, like the promotion dream almost taken off you, haven't you? Even if you are third in the league and you were looking at the playoffs, that still disappeared.
Yeah, and things were just starting to build, and they could have been carrying a fair bit of momentum into those playoffs. But looking at South Shields, they are looking at it. Were they going to win the league? I'd say so.
I'd have put your house on it, Matt.
Yeah, well, I haven't got an house, but if I had one, I'd have put it on it. But yeah, I think it's safe to say they would have gone on to win the league. But I guess stranger things have happened. There technically was still a quarter of the season to play. So, it's harsh on them. But
is that what you would have? Is that what you would have done? The null and void.
It's difficult, really, because there's no situation that would please anybody because it's just such a new and unprecedented situation. Then whatever you would have done, there would have been a loser. If you'd have done points per game, there may have been teams relegated who were outside the relegation places. It's if you do null and void, obviously it denies the likes of South Shields promotion. So there's no right or wrong answer. But I think with the logistics of it all, when are we going to be safe to restart football again? Most contracts at this level run out at the end of May. Are we going to be in a position to play football at the end of May? Probably not.
Well, it's actually 2nd of May they run out.
Well, are we going to be in a position to play football again at the end of April? Definitely not, I'd say.
I think that's it. I think there's been a lot of people moaning about how quickly the decision was made, but I think, the chairman sort of alluded to it that the club wouldn't exist if they were made to restart again in June. And, like you say, I've never seen the feasibility. I don't particularly see the feasibility of even like the Premier League doing it in terms of restarting the season. For me, the debate isn't whether the season restarts. The debate is whether you write it off or whether you try and construct some sort of way of finalising the table. And the points per game thing. That if you were to do it, I suppose that is the fairest way. But I still have a massive opposition to that, because I just think if you might have played, you might have played 75% of the games, but you might have played the top half or the bottom half once, and that gives you an unfair advantage. It's hard for teams like, obviously, if you look at the Premier League, if Liverpool weren't crowned Premier League champions, it'd be an absolute travesty. But the reality of that situation is they were only 1 or 2 wins away from it anyway. Whereas ultimately, South Shields would still, even though they were clear at the top, they would still probably have had to win another 5, 6, 7 games, wouldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's, like I said, there's no precedent for it at all. And it's a completely unique situation. And I think it's just a time where the game's got to pull together and just see it for what it is, which is something that there's no precedent for, and hopefully something we'll never have to worry about again.
Yeah, like you say, it's not like no one's done this deliberately. It's trying to make the best out of a bad situation. And I suppose, as time goes on, I'm hoping that, you're probably looking at, 4 months away from the start of next season in theory. You'd like to think that will happen, on time and whatever, but you just never know, do you?
Hopefully, but I guess it's got to fall in line with the rest of the pyramid. And I was reading today that they're planning to do a sort of mini Champions League in August that finishes with the final on August the 29th, I think. Which means surely the Premier League can't start until after that's done. I don't know, and I guess it'll all filter down from there. Personally, I think we might be looking at hopefully mid to late September, hopefully.
You think it'll be that long? You think it'll be that long before we restart?
I think so. Looking at it logistically, hopefully we start on time, but you just don't know, do you? It's all up in the air at the minute.
I suppose that's one of the issues that people have had, is that the Premier League and the Football League are still sort of up in the air, and I suppose that's one of the things South Shields and other clubs have raised, is like, well, how come the FA's decided that this is happening with our league, but nothing's happened with Premier League and others? What are your thoughts on that standpoint?
I get why I get why you can't just do with the Premier League what you've done with leagues at our level and just say, boom, that's it. There's too much money in it, unfortunately, higher up the pyramid. So I can understand why there's a clamour to finish it, but like I say, there is a knock-on effect, and it affects everything all the way down. So the sooner they come up with a solution, the better. I think they're on about doing games behind closed doors from the middle of June, maybe. And I think they said, I read something the other day saying they think they can finish the EFL season in 35 days. Now, I think most of the teams that I follow Rochdale, I know we've still got 15 games to play. So 15 games in 35 days is
especially on Rochdale's pitch.
Especially on our pitch, yeah, it's a bit of a beach at the minute. But yeah, it's difficult. I'm quite intrigued to see how it does play out, because as a fan of the game, I want to see football as soon as possible, and I want to see it back. If I get a summer of watching football every day, then great. I'm not going to turn it down, but I am interested to see how it works out, put it that way.
Yeah, I was thinking, actually, I've just randomly thought, imagine a team that had been on a bad losing run when it stopped. They might restart. Imagine if they restarted in a couple of weeks' time or whatever, and all of a sudden they managed to string a bit of a run together that went against the form they were. I was thinking about how a pundit's going to start talking, because you can't really say, oh well, Bournemouth lost the last game, so they've got no chance, because you don't really get there. We'll move on from that, and we'll talk about how the situation's impacted on the club. So I know you did a piece with the chairman perhaps when the season first got suspended, and then obviously he's had the Q&A on the website where he sort of confirmed parts of what was in your beat, and then added a bit more to it about revenue. It's a tough one because, absolutely no income coming in. What are you meant to do?
Yeah, I mean, my heart goes out to Toby. It really does. I mean, when I spoke to him, you could just see him. He shakes his head all the time and he scratches his head about what he's about, because where does it come from? He's keeping the place going on his own at the minute because there is nothing coming in. There's obviously no gate receipts. The social club's shut. The function rooms are shut. You can't use the 3G pitch, and all those other three were stuff that kept the club going through the summer months when there was no games on. So it's, with all that gone, you do have to wonder, and we know how much Toby's put in. I think you said in your piece it's a high end 6-figure sum that he's put in since he started.
Yeah, 2013, I think it was. Yeah.
And it's a lot to ask of one person, isn't it? And and like you said, there seems to be something every year that wants to trip them up at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I think we said it was the absolute best season last season for Farsley to win the league. Because obviously they've won the league, got promoted to National League North, and then obviously, I would imagine National League North will get null and void. There's not going to be any relegation, so they've got effectively 2 seasons guaranteed in National League North, having won the league last year. Of course, we ended up finishing third and then losing in the Super Playoff. And yeah, I guess it is. I think when I spoke to Toby, he was thinking, well, we have another season of going to the same places, and then I think he's sort of thinking, well, based on the impact of this, there's going to be maybe 7, 8, 9 teams that are probably going to have a go at it and have a big size budget that Warrington are maybe going to struggle to compete with, or well, not maybe, definitely going to struggle to compete with, and then that means he's then got to go around again another season around the same old places, and with no disrespect to places like Mickleover, ultimately you want to be going to York City away and Chester City away and not Mickleover.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, but I guess it's not much new to what was happening either this season or last. You've got teams who have big budgets who are going to go for it. Your likes of South Shields who've pretty much gone full time. Baseford have thrown a lot of money at it. Ashton threw a lot of money at it. So did Gainsborough. So did Buxton.
Yeah.
And they were still right up there. I mean, granted, it's going to be a vastly reduced budget next year, and we all know that from obviously both pieces we've done.
My position's always that I believe that cards and whatever, they can punch above the weight. They can get value for money on players, and even with a bottom half of the league budget, I still think they'd have a chance of getting playoffs.
I agree. I think cards is the key. Cards and his staff are the key. Because they have their contacts book is ridiculous. The people they know, and the name they have around this level, around non-league, particularly around the Northwest region, is great, and it's a great asset to have. So they will hold the key, and I think this will be really where it shines through. I think
it was interesting actually when that piece, because obviously Toby said in the Q&A he gave some praise to cards, and it was interesting actually that I had a couple of messages from other people, like other websites and other, just saying that they'd spoke to cards and how fantastic he was, and they'd done an interview with him, and he said this, that, and whatever, and just, you don't see that all the time. Do you know what I mean? You don't, obviously I write, as you do, you write a lot of stuff, and you don't necessarily always get peer people coming and saying, oh, we've done this piece with cards, he was brilliant, whatever. You don't always see that, and that is a good example of what you talk about, of the respect. And Toby did allude to that sort of in the piece as well. Players wise, it seems that they're going to be basically going to be asking people to take a pay cut to stay. What was really interesting about last season was that pretty much ended up with the same squad that had finished the season before, partly due to the fact that, for whatever reason, the signings that were made over the course of the season just couldn't bed in properly.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about, will that help the club in some ways? Because that core, I mean, I don't know how many players it is, but let's say there's 11 or 12, a core group of 11 or 12, maybe a bit more players that have been here for 2 seasons, maybe know a bit more about the club, got a bit more loyalty about the club. Will that help in some ways try and work on a reduced budget because those players are perhaps more likely to think, actually, we like it at Warrington. If Joe Bloggs stays, I'll stay, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think so, because I think Toby said in your Q&A, there's some players that feel part of the club now. I think you could probably have a guess at, who those guys are. Your likes of Mark Roberts, maybe Tony McMillan, and people like that who, I've been around for a long time and have been around the club for a long time. And, I can, if you could, the aim is to keep as many of that core together as you possibly can. Obviously budget will dictate some of it, but, there may be players who maybe feel they owe the club a little bit of loyalty and will think, you know what, I'm enjoying it here. The money's not as important to me as it once was. And the enjoyment's more important to me, and they might stick around. I certainly picked that up from talking to some of the more experienced lads last year when they decided to stay. The likes of Robbo, Dave Raven, Tony Mack, things like that. They all put their enjoyment of the game above any financial gain, because they're at the later stage of their career and they're playing the game for the enjoyment of it, and hopefully that will work in the club's favour, because they're still quality operators at this level.
Yeah, and I suppose there's that bit of an unknown, because in theory everyone's in the same position. Warrington aren't the only club that is obviously locked down. Well, obviously everyone's locked down, but everyone's being impacted, and of course every club will be impacted in different ways. It'll be interesting to see whether there are clubs out there who will come in and offer 50 quid a week more for whatever player, and then it's up to then the player to decide whether he wants to go and play in the Welsh Premier League for 50 quid more or whatever. That's going to be an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, there was talk that they were going to try and finish their season, wasn't there?
Yeah. So obviously, I think they're still. I presume that'll be to do with Europe though, because of course they've got European qualification and all that. So perhaps I was reading something about La Liga. And they were on about they were just going to do the European qualifications based on the current position. So like the top four, because they've all played the same number of games. It was the top four, and then the next three or whatever went in the Europa League. But the fourth and fifth teams have got exactly the same goal difference, same points, same goal difference. It's Getafe and I think it's Sociedad. And ultimately Getafe would lose out because they've scored less goals.
Yeah.
And how gutted would you be?
Yeah. Well, it's like you said before, isn't it? There's not going to be a solution to this where there's not a loser. You're not gonna please everybody, are you? So it's just trying to please the most amount of people.
Another interesting point is going to be there's going to be a shift. The transfer market's going to be a lot different, because I think there's going to be a shift towards the clubs have the power rather than the players, as opposed to previous years. And it'd be interesting to see like how, do clubs sit tight until the very end? Do players take deals early, or do they? Because I think in previous years it's been a bit like players who thought they could go higher up. I'm not talking about Warrington players necessarily. I mean in general.
Yeah.
They may be reluctant to commit to a Northern Premier League team because they still feel like they could get a Conference deal or a Conference North deal, and it's only a week before the start of the season that they think, oh, actually, I'll take that deal Warrington or whoever have offered me.
Yeah, you often see that, don't you? I mean, it's not till the last few weeks before the season starts where recruitment at this level seems to pick up, because the Conference and the Conference North teams need to finalise their squads because they start earlier. So there's an onus on them to get settled up earlier, and that means there's 2 weeks then for anyone who's not picked up to, for the Northern Premier League teams to fight over it. But it could, like I say, it could change this summer because it's all changed. It's all different. It's all up in the air.
So at the moment, the only player on contract is Tom Warren. Just to explain, I guess people perhaps don't realise how it works. Contracted players, ultimately, the contract finishes May the 2nd, and that's it. They're free to go. Players who aren't on contract, which obviously there aren't any now anyway, but during the season, any other club can come in and put 7 days notice on them and basically take them. Of course, if the player wants to go. And we did see that. There was a couple of examples of that, perhaps with more fringe players during the season. So, effectively, it's not an alien thing to not have any players on contract, is I suppose the point that I'm making.
Yeah, no,
you're
it's
ultimately
not.
looking at starting again from. You would probably be in this boat anyway. You know that, Cards or whoever will know that X number of players are probably likely to stay, and then just take it from there.
Yeah, I think that sort of thing will come together in the next few weeks, the next month or so. I'm sure there'll be conversations going on with players now. Cards knows what sort of money he's got to work with, and it'll all come out in the wash in the next few weeks, hopefully.
So let's have a think about highlights or moments from last season, or memorable moments from last season, or from the season just gone. I was thinking actually it was a good job. The very last game was that Matlock game,
Yeah.
and of course after 75 minutes it looked like it was going to be a bit of a disaster. 2-0 down, ended up winning 3-2. It's probably a good job that happened, because could you imagine that having been the last game of the season and lost 2-0 at home and then had to stew over it for, basically 4, 5, 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, what a fantastic end to that game. It was brilliant stuff, and the atmosphere in the ground was superb behind that goal, and that will be the last memory that people will take away of Warrington Town this year. You know, the how great the atmosphere was and things like that, and it will hopefully make them want to come back. But that's got to be up there with highlights. One that might fly under the radar, but one that sticks out for me is the win over Scarborough at home a few weeks before the season ended. Because speaking to Cards after that game, he didn't feel like they'd had a big win like that this year over a team that is expected to be up there. Because Scarborough are in good form, they were looking at making a playoff charge, and it was a real backs to the wall performance because Scarborough pretty much dominated that second half, and Bobby Jones coming in the morning of the game made 3 absolutely outstanding saves, and the team defended with grit and determination and ended up winning the game. So that sort of sticks out. That sticks out for me among my highlights. But there's others, of course, isn't there, which I'm sure you'll tell me now.
Yeah, I was just having a look. Obviously, you missed this one, but the 4-4 FC United, I'm sure, will live long in the memory of the people that were there. Coming back from 2-0 down, and then I suppose remember it in a bad way at the end, because of course FC United scored with pretty much the last kick of the game. We had the snow game, didn't we, at Buxton, an abandoned game to add to the list, and of course the run in the Cheshire Senior Cup. I know a few fans are a bit gutted about this, because the club, I don't think the club's ever won it, the Cheshire Senior Cup, and was in the semi-finals, and that's being taken away. So I'll never know there. The Bamber Bridge 3-3. Actually, that's one. I've just got the results up from this. That Bamber Bridge one on New Year's Day.
Yeah, that was a good one to shake the cobwebs off for New Year's Day. Again, it was one of them. They were well in control of that game, and they gave a penalty away right on half time, didn't they? And that just sort of seemed to change the momentum. And there's one they dragged themselves back into a winning position for, but ended up giving it away the last minute again.
Yeah, and then the infamous Morpeth pitch game. That was the heaviest defeat of the season.
You had to, didn't you? You had to bring that one up.
It's funny actually, because obviously they've not lost to South Shields. South Shields seems got a little bit of a voodoo over South Shields, a little bit. Obviously they had that 1-1 draw, which at their place this season, which was a bit disappointing because they had 10 men for half the game. But on the flip side, you've got the Morpeth side, who Morpeth pretty handsomely beat us twice. So I suppose that'll be one record to put straight for next season. We hope that. Well, you would imagine that the division will be exactly the same next season. I don't expect there to be any lateral movement, it depends on whether any clubs do go out of business, whether there's any change. But then I suppose even if a club does go out, there's surely not. There's no one to reprieve. So
no, there's not really. There's not.
They can't reprieve someone from relegation when there hasn't been relegation. So fingers crossed. That was it. So what are your predictions then, Matt, for the summer? When's it going to start? So you don't think we'll see football till mid-September?
Not at this level, no. I think mid-September we're going to be looking at, and I think ultimately it might mean more Tuesday night games, because I know they cut the division to 22 teams to cut down the midweek games, but I think we might have to see more midweek games to try and finish on time next season. But yeah, I think mid-September we're looking at.
Cup replays, maybe get rid of cup replays, trophy replays.
Possibly,
because
yeah.
it's not the actual replay that causes the issue necessarily, is it? It's more the fact that if you've got a game arranged for the Tuesday night in the league, and then at 3 days' notice it gets punted for cup replay, and then you've got to fit it in later on, that it causes a few headaches here and there, doesn't it? So
yeah, it does. But yeah, that might be something that we see. I think the League Cup and the Cheshire Cup are all decided on the night anyway, so
yeah,
no replays there. So, but yeah, I think we're looking at mid-September. Unfortunately, it seems a long way off now, but hopefully time will fly.
Well, we're gonna try and do a few more of these. We know Cards is up for doing one, so I'm slightly worried about the technology side of things. We're getting a third person in, but I'm sure we'll work it out. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Do give us a tweet and a shout out if you watch it as well. Matt, I look forward to your regular quiz nights. Keeps me sane, and we'll see you very soon.
Yeah, take care, everyone. Stay safe.